and I'm the Assistant Coordinator of the Europe Direct Information Centre at Blanchardstown Library. Welcome to the second in a series of interviews that we're doing on the European Green Deal. In this interview, I'll be speaking to Patrick O'Riordan. Patrick is an economic advisor at the European Commission representation in Ireland. He's an economic counsellor and member of the Recovery and Resilience Task Force. Patrick studied economics, business and public administration and is now working to help Ireland gain maximum benefit from the EU's recovery facility. He also wants to help Ireland to grow in a fair and sustainable way. His special focus is on an economy that works for people and for the planet. In a wide-ranging career in the Commission, he's previously worked in the fields of external trade, overseas development, industrial policies and external relations. In this interview, I'm going to speak to Patrick about how the European Green Deal will be financed. After that, we'll move on to speaking about the Just Transition Mechanism. Hello, Patrick, and thank you for joining me.
Good morning, Barry. Thank you for having me, and thanks to your people for sending in questions from around the country.
You're very welcome, Patrick. And yesterday we spoke to Jonathan Claridge about the Green Deal, the European Green Deal in a very general sense. And today we're going to concentrate more on the financial aspect of the deal and in particular the just transition. So to begin with, could you just tell me what exactly the just transition means in the context of the European Green Deal?
Sure, indeed. Yeah, no, I think it's a right, good question because it's important to clarify, I think, at the outset the meaning behind some of these terms, this jargon that we sometimes use and that cannot always, isn't always helpful in understanding what's at issue here. So, as you said, if you looked at the Green Deal and everything around that, and we're seeing, climate change, I think we're all realising more and more how serious it is, the impact it's already having in our country, and the existential threat some would say that it's even posing to our economies, to our livelihoods. So I think there is a growing recognition that we need to change. We need to make a transition to a more sustainable economy. We've seen the David Attenborough programs. I think we're realizing what's at stake. So I think at EU level there's been a really stark realization this transition needs to happen, and it needs to happen over the next 10, 20, 30 years. So it's not something for the long distant future, it's right here, right now. In making this transition to the more sustainable economy, there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of economic business opportunities, real potential for just opportunities to do good things around that. But there will clearly be some people and places that are going to be adversely affected. There are regions, particularly I'm thinking coal mining regions, some of the heavy industrial regions in Europe and in Ireland, in the Midlands region in particular, that are going to be adversely affected. Some, people are going to lose jobs. Different businesses are going to be affected and so on. So the whole idea behind the Just Transition Mechanism is this transition. It's fair, it's just, that it leaves no one behind. So there is, a really big package of supports, of measures, of money and funds, and really a lot has been prepared to offer to these people and places that are most affected, really with the idea that this transition that has to happen is fair, nobody's left behind, that everybody's taken care of as much as possible in that transition. So that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So really there's going to be a complete reorganisation of how our economy works.
There is a lot of changes coming down the tracks. We're already seeing a lot of them happening already, but indeed there's, more and more over the coming decades, things are going to be changing quite quickly in some areas,
Okay. And how much money or compensation is actually available in the Just Transition Fund?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot has been really mobilised. So I think this has really been accepted in the overall discussion around the Green Deal and on this, and we've seen, up to €1 trillion has been put on the table with all the different measures to make this happen. For the Just Transition Fund, for the whole Just Transition part, we're talking 150 billion, maybe up to 200 billion of euros to be made available across Europe over the next 7-8 years. So it's a massive, chunk of money really that's been put up for this. If you think, in the budget we had here a couple of days ago, there was 18 billion in extra spending for health, education, and all these was put on. So here we're talking, obviously at a European level, but really, really major amounts of money being made available. There'll be a just transition fund, so there'll be particular grants that will be available to people and places most affected. There's different schemes to be done then with the European Investment Bank, with different mechanisms, Invest EU, to involve the private sector. So I think that's important as well. This can't happen without the private sector involvement as well. It's not just public money. It's really the idea to blend together the public supports, the guarantees, the help, with and attracting in private investment, attracting in private money that can really, as a business opportunity, but also to allow projects to happen at local level that are beneficial to the community. So that's what it's at stake at a European level.
Yeah, I mean the figures you're giving there when you speak of €1 trillion. I mean it's really colossal. And yesterday with Jonathan, we spoke about Ursula von der Leyen saying that this was our man on the moon moment. And when you hear figures like that, it really brings it home. And so could I just ask now, who will actually benefit from these funds?
Yeah, so it is targeted. I think that's important to say. It's not a general sort of a thing across the board, that it's really the attempt has been made to deploy it and to use it in those areas that need it most, quite simply. So, as I said, at a European level, it's a lot of the old coal mining regions. So places in, what used to be Eastern Germany and Poland and some of these areas, a lot of coal mining still going on, a lot of people in these heavy industries that are highly polluting. So it's bad for the atmosphere, it's bad for the area, as well as being, damaging at a global level. So it's these areas that have been identified as being most at risk, and most affected. And in Ireland, of course, it's the Midlands region. So this is the former, we know where Port Ramona has been active, and the turf cutting, the peat, and all this. So this whole Midlands area, which is quite a large area in Ireland, has been designated as one of these regions that will be affected by the transition. So that is one of the regions that would be able to benefit the most from these supports.
And would you say on a European level, has there been any resistance, do you think, to the changes that are needed?
Yeah, it's always a difficult sell, because the way I look at it, it's always when you talk about the benefits, in terms of cleaner air, lower energy consumption, more renewable energy, the benefits are sort of long-term and global. I mean, if we all have to make decisions about upgrading our boilers or retrofitting our houses to these things, and you look at the upfront cost, and you're thinking, wow, that's a lot upfront. The benefits come down the track. It's the same with the climate in some ways, that you have the benefits, will be seen over decades to come, whereas the costs are immediate. So there are some, real people in real jobs in Port Ramona in the Midlands, across, large swathes of Eastern Europe. People are losing their jobs, they're losing their livelihoods, families are being affected, companies that have been involved in these activities for decades are going to be, their business no longer a business need for their products or services. So, for those people that are affected, it's a real hit, it's a real cost. So sort of selling wonderful ideas about, whatever benefits for society going forward, if you're losing your job right here, right now, it's difficult to appreciate the global benefits. So I think, that's why there is some resistance. We're all going to be paying more for our petrol and diesel. Not everybody is jumping for joy that it's great, I can make a contribution to tackling climate change. Mostly is, that's an extra additional cost. The nights are getting colder, we're putting oil in our tanks for the winter as such. So again, the costs are immediate. You sort of think, well, I'm taking a hit now, it's a good thing to do, but it's not always obvious, so there's a continuous need to explain and to talk around the reasons why. But that's why the just transition is so important, that the transition is seen to be fair, and that those who are losing will be compensated as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that it's I suppose, making the difficult decisions now for long-term benefit. So to move on, I mean, the big question, which always comes up in anything, I mean, you mentioned the figure of $1 trillion, and obviously, how is the just transition and the Green Deal in general going to be financed?
So it is from the EU budget. So this is an EU sort of mechanism, an EU project. So it comes from the EU budget, which is being negotiated right now as we speak. So the Commission in this process has come forward with its proposals, with its plans, its ideas, justified. The Council has agreed to this long-term budget. So the Green Deal is a big part of this, and also we've seen over the summer months, the whole Next Generation EU. So the EU also came forward with this new initiative dealing with the effects of COVID and to help the economy bounce back and recover from that. So this was this new initiative that was put in place that the European Commission is borrowing on behalf of the EU. But the Green Deal was an integral part of the initial budget proposals. So it's from the EU budget, so it'll be contributions from the member states that will finance this, and some own resources on this. So this is how the EU budget part of it. And then as an element of it all, there is this invitation opportunity for the private sector to get involved. So in the Just Transition part of the whole package, as I mentioned, I think there are real opportunities, encouragement for private sector entrepreneurs, business people to get involved, to engage with this, to contribute. There's a couple of other elements maybe are worth mentioning in this context around the Just Transition mechanism, is that there will be what we call a Just Transition platform. So it'll be like an advisory hub that will be established where anybody with ideas, with questions, with just kind of wondering how can I do something useful from this big scheme in my locality, in my parish, in my region, that advice will be available. And there'll also be kind of a matchmaking facility as well that has been set up where you can try and match up. It's not a John B. Keane matchmaking. It's to bring together projects and ideas with the capital. So if you have some investors, there's lots of green funds and whatever investment vehicles these days, they're looking for investment opportunities. If somebody in Laois or Offaly, whatever, has a really good project and needs investors for that, they can, through this platform, seek out investors, and hopefully you have a nice coming together of those with the money and those with the need to do something with that money.
Yeah, and it's clear, and again, this is something I've discussed already with other speakers, that this really is a joint effort. It's not just a question of coming from government or from the EU, that the private sector is involved as well, as is every individual citizen.
Absolutely, yeah. No, this has to be, I know, in Ireland they use the term a whole of government approach to this, and this is for everybody. It's really getting local. In Ireland's case, for example, it's maybe useful to mention that already in preparation for this money that will become available, if the Parliament and everybody signs off on the deal before the end of the year. So from January next year, this funding will be available. But already in anticipation of this, Ireland has started to prepare the ground to work on this. So already a Just Transition Commissioner has been appointed for Ireland. It's Kieran Mulvey, he's well known from Labour Court and so on in the past. So he's actually been doing a lot of work already I think since last November he's been appointed. So on the ground in the Midlands region, he's been meeting with individuals, with bodies, organisations to see from the bottom up what kind of ideas, what initiatives, what things can happen, once there is money available to support this. So I know he's presented already a plan in April of this year. The government has given a positive welcome to this. So there is a lot preparatory work already happening on the ground. So it's not an imposition, certainly not from Brussels, that you should do this and this is how the transition is going to happen. It should be things coming from the ground up, local involvement. Everybody needs to engage. Rather than sort of passively being victims. Isn't it terrible? They're shutting down. Gordon Amona, we can't do this anymore. It's to seize the opportunities and to really, invest a little bit of time and effort for long-term, initiatives and projects that would be good for lives and livelihoods going forward.
Okay. And speaking of those very projects, how can Ireland and the regions in Ireland access this funding?
Yeah, so indeed the mechanism is that Ireland, the regions affected, will be invited to prepare a Just Transition plan. So this would be at a national level, if you like. So it'll be Ireland doing a plan. It'll be covering the Midlands region, but it'll be an Irish plan for the Just Transition. That will be submitted to the European Commission then. We will have a look at that, assess the ideas, what's being proposed there, to see is it in line with the general objectives of, green transition, takes account of the general values and initiatives coming out of Brussels in general policy areas. So that will be, so it'll be local communities contributing. As I said, in Ireland, the commissioner, Just Transition, has established, he's doing his work, so anybody, in the area who wants to get involved can see, through his office, or certainly, through the departments in Dublin, present a plan that will be looked at, and funding will be provided on the basis of that plan, basically. Then for Ireland, there's been earmarked already, I think I've seen a figure, 176, maybe 200 million available for Ireland from this, so it is a very significant amount of money, specifically earmarked. Well, it will depend on the quality of the projects and all the rest of it, but the expectation is that Ireland can really, with a good plan, get a lot of good benefit from this.
So you can see that there's obviously a lot of opportunity there for businesses and for projects to get off the ground. I mean, obviously there's difficult decisions, but if you see it in that point of view, I suppose, as an opportunity rather than a difficulty. That's the idea. I understand. I mean, I can appreciate it. It sounds wonderful if you're being told, this has been shut down and we won't need your services anymore. It's hard to see the opportunity immediately, but this is part of the transition that's taken place in our economy and continues, over time with churn of businesses. We've seen agriculture has changed, different parts of industry change, and Ireland has been generally, good at adapting and moving on from this. I mean, but I know in the region, I don't know it that well, but I had an uncle who worked for Bordenamona, so he left our home place in Tipperary. He moved, with his family to Bracknell, Rathangan, County Kildare, and was working there in Bordenamona all his life. So we knew some of when I used to go there to the races and the Curragh and that. So I can imagine in some of these towns and villages, it's not perceived immediately as an opportunity, but I think, with a little bit of understanding and appreciation and realization of the supports that are available, and really I think that's the key message, that support, help, whether it's retraining, whether it's readapting of businesses, whether just new things, new ways of working and living in these areas. And I think in the long term it will be beneficial, and the regions will come out of it stronger than before. Okay, thank you. And I'm going to finish up now with a question that's actually been submitted by a local resident here in Dublin 15, Finbar, and he has said that when reading about the European Green Deal, he kept coming across this term, the circular economy. And I thought you, being an economic advisor, would be the best person to maybe ask, could you give us an explanation of what we mean by the term circular economy? Indeed, yes. Another one of these terms that we sort of bandy about and we throw around, and we kind of assume that it's obvious when it's far from obvious, I guess. Yeah, but in itself, it's quite a simple concept as such, that we need to kind of move away from the throwaway, the single-use kind of consumption that we've all been doing for the last I don't know how many decades now. It's probably 50s and 60s. It started, this mass manufacturing and using and throwing away, and not really keeping things, to get to a way where the mantra is more reduce, reuse, recycle. So we're reducing what we're consuming. So, I don't know, across a whole range of products, you buy something that lasts a little bit more long term. Even with our cups we're drinking out of, or our coffee these days, like trying to get rid of the plastic cups already. At the water cooler, these plastic cup things, they've been phased out in the commercial buildings, I know, in many other places. You bring your own cup or mug, or some of the kids these days all walking around with their big refillable bottles of water, or these sort of things. We don't need to buy all these millions of these bottles of water that you can refill from water fountains or whatever. So to move away from this throwaway single-use thing to really reducing what we're consuming, to reusing what, again, you think of our parents and all that, clothes and things that lasted longer. You didn't buy t-shirts that you kind of wear once, as some kids do, and throw them away or something. But that you're reusing, and then recycling is the key element of that. So your things are going back into the circle, into the system again. So, again, we've gotten used to it in recent years with paper and cardboard and these things, putting that into the separate bin, and that is, recycled then and used by paper manufacturers and used for all different things. So we get our packages delivered from Amazon or whatever, that this cardboard has been recycled and will be used again and again. So it's that concept
of reusing as much as possible and recycling what can't be used, so that you're just much less resource use. And I guess another key element of it is that the waste of one sector, if you like, so getting rid of this concept of waste. So what we consider waste can be an input into something else. So in nature you have natural fertilizers, and this process which gives nutrients to the plants. So you can have this process that you're reducing waste, and what is being remains as waste can somehow be reused again and made into different products. I see with the kids, they get some bags these days that are made of different recycled products, and that's that sense of reducing, reusing, and recycling products. If that makes some bit of sense.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic way to finish this video, because it really brings home what we can do as individuals, people watching the video here today, and what we can do to contribute to solving this climate crisis and doing our bit. And the circular economy is really something that we can all kind of participate in.
Absolutely, yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's the realization across, whether it's walking or cycling or doing these kind of small activities, that we all can play a massive part in bringing about this transition that we need to get to. It's not sort of a choice anymore, and it's right now. It's over the next 10, 20, 30 years. And then, with the Just Transition mechanism, with the supports that are put in place, that the EU has got your back, if you like, that it is trying, with national governments and through local actors and everybody else, to provide the supports and the compensation and the help for those that are most adversely affected, so that the transition is just and fair and no one is left behind. That's the basic aim.
Well, thank you very much for that, Patrick. That was really interesting, and I think we all have a much better understanding now of what the Just Transition is and the financing of it. So thank you very much.
I hope so. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick, for giving us such a clear explanation as to how the European Green Deal will be financed and to how the Just Transition mechanism will function. It's very clear that in the decades to come, our economy and indeed our whole society will see great changes. Another area where we expect to see great changes is in agriculture and indeed in our everyday diets. In tomorrow's interview, I will be speaking to Dr. Sinead McCarthy, who is a researcher with Teagasc. She'll be speaking about the farm to fork strategy part of the European Green Deal. Join us tomorrow at 11 a.m, again on our Facebook channel or YouTube for that interview. I look forward to seeing you then.